I love the line in that song that says, "The Father is welcoming. This is our homecoming." It's true, friends. The story of Jesus is welcoming to everyone, or as it says in John 3:16, the whosoever. The Bible says if we believe in Jesus and put our trust in Him, we won't share the same sting of death that this cruel world dictates. We'll spend forever in the presence of God. That is the essence of the gospel. I want to thank our guests today, including Hannah and Matt, for those beautiful songs, as well as the folks from Bethel Church in Bay Roberts. We've really enjoyed our time together, but sadly, we've reached the end for today. If you've enjoyed this episode, we invite you to check out any of our past episodes on our website or YouTube channel. We'll say goodbye for now, but hopefully you'll join us again next week. About this program, we'd love to hear it. Email or call us, or send us your feedback through social media.
When it comes to drugs, how much freedom is too much for kids?
Drugs are out there. Will my teen feel free to say no around other kids?
I didn't live drug-free when I was younger. Can I admit that to my kids?
Drugs worry me, but how can I feel free to talk about it with my kids?
Questions about drugs and kids? Drug-Free Kids Canada.
Sports fans know Sundays are for football. That's why you need NFL Sunday tickets. With NFL Sunday Ticket, you'll get every live game, every Sunday afternoon, all season long. Follow your favorite teams and players live in HD. Order NFL Sunday Ticket and get up to 200 regular season games. Call 1-888-ROGERS-1 today.
One in 3 fatalities on our waterways is caused by impaired boating. Don't boat impaired.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Percy Farwell. For those that don't know me, I'm the mayor of the town of Gander. And on September 11th, 2001, incidentally, I was the deputy mayor here, which means I'm more than a little familiar with the events of that day, and sadly, more than a little older than I think I look. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to our Untold Stories 2 commemorative event. Now, whereas the Focus of our commemorative service held each year, and which will be held here in this venue again tomorrow at 4 p.m. The focus of that is a reflection on the tragic events of September 11th, 2001. Those who lost their lives in New York and Shanksville and Washington, D.C., those who lost friends and loved ones, those who heroically responded to the crisis on the ground during those chaotic times, and those who remain troubled by this part of our history. Tonight's event is intended to provide insight into the perspectives of those who became involved in the response in this area when nearly 6,600 people arrived unannounced, confused, afraid, without luggage, and requiring the basic necessities of food, shelter, and clothing, and most importantly, reassurance, compassion, and love. Now, much attention has been focused on the events that transpired here, and many stories have been told in books, films, and of course, a certain hit Broadway and touring musical. However, an event of this scale, with many thousands of people engaged, generates many thousands of stories and perspectives equally deserving of being told. Last September, on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, we held our original Untold Stories event, where guest speakers from Gander and surrounding communities brought you their experiences and perspectives that were not previously well known or well circulated. Tonight, we're offering the opportunity for 5 more stories to be told. Before we proceed, I'd like to acknowledge the attendance. I don't know if yes, they're there. Good evening, Ambassador. The ambassador has a very tight schedule while he's here, and I didn't know if he was going to get here for the opening or not. But I'd like to acknowledge the attendance of the representatives of the U.S. government who've come to Gander to take part in our 21st anniversary commemoration. The U.S. Ambassador to Canada, His Excellency David L. Cohen and Mrs. Rhonda Cohen, Consul General Lyra Carr from the U.S. Consulate in Halifax, Consul Daniel Bingham Pankratz from the U.S. Consulate in Halifax, and Molly Sanchez Crow, Public Affairs Officer for the U.S. Embassy in Ottawa. Welcome to you all. It's an honor to have you here. I'd also like to acknowledge and welcome other special visitors who've traveled to be with us this weekend. Jeanette Gutierrez is here somewhere, a 9/11 survivor from New York who's been here with us many times. In fact, I was checking it out earlier. I think she may be eligible to vote here now. Not that it matters to me. I met this afternoon Tony, Ian, and Lydia, who were sitting right here, right in front, who, as I say, I met this afternoon, who've traveled here from the UK, having first seen this story told in the London production of Come From Away, and feeling compelled to come and be here in Gander and see the show with us here in Gander. Welcome all the way from the UK. And of course, there's a bit of a pall over the UK and the rest of the world with the loss of Queen Elizabeth II as well, and we certainly acknowledge that at this time. As is the case every year, I'm sure there's many others who've come from afar, mostly unannounced, to be with us at this time. And so if there's any of you here tonight, welcome to you, and I hope we get to meet you, or I get to meet you in the coming days. I'd like to ask that all phones be set to silent, if you would, please. Photography is permitted during the event, but please be mindful of your neighbors and those sitting behind you and so on. And if you haven't already figured it out, pictures of me are worthless, so don't bother. Our special guests this evening, our presenters, are seated before you, behind me, and I want to extend a big welcome and a big thank you to each of them for being a part of our event. Starting from my right, I think so, yeah, is Greg Drover, the former principal of Centerville Academy, a little ways down the road from here, and the current principal of Gander Collegiate, where somehow miraculously he managed to graduate my 2 sons. Second is Rhonda Lane, who at the time of the events of September 2001 worked with Allied Aviation, which is an aviation service provider at the Gander International Airport. Beulah Cooper is a long-time volunteer and, if I may say, backbone of the Royal Canadian Legion for many years. Ethni Daly is a retired teacher from Lakewood Academy in Glenwood, about 20-odd kilometers down the road from us. And Lane Zizka from Fort Worth, Texas, who wrote a Master's of Science thesis focusing on the events in Newfoundland during and after 9/11. So each special guest will relate their unique stories as they experienced it, and we're thankful to them for sharing their experiences with us. Each has been told they have 15 minutes. We are being televised, and we want to thank Rogers Television for providing that great community service to us yet again. So each presenter has been told to try to limit themselves to 15 minutes. And once everybody's spoken, hopefully we will have a chance for a question and answer session and take feedback from the audience. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Greg Drover up here as our first speaker of the evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Ambassador, special guests, colleagues on stage. Great to see you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I've been asked to speak about my role and relationship with the events of 9/11. Although my story may be a bit different from some of the other distinguished speakers here this evening, I hope you find my story somewhat interesting. My name is Greg Drover, and since September 2004, I've been the principal of Gander Collegiate, or GC as she is affectionately known, housed and cared for some 357 passengers of the Lufthansa LH400 between September the 11th and the 15th, 2001. It is often said that we remember vivid details of where we were during traumatic events, and from a psychological perspective, this is called the flashbulb memory. My memory begins on September 11th, 2001. It was a Tuesday. It was a beautiful, clear morning, and at the time, I was the principal of Centerville Academy, which services Indian Bay, Wareham, Centerville, and Trinity. It's a K-8 school, about an hour and a half distance from Gander, and the Gander Loop, if you would say. I was out talking to our workers, bus drivers, secretaries, and custodians who were on the picket line at the time. And you probably heard or remember that there was a job action at that time, and I was out having a conversation about how their morning was going. I remember looking up into the sky and seeing the planes circling overhead and wondering why they were all heading into Gander. It was then that one of our teachers came out and said, "Mr. Drover, you need to come and see this." We have a TV set up in the staff room at the time to keep us up to date on the strike situation. Like the rest of the world, I stood in shock at what I had seen. It wasn't long after that I got a phone call from the director of the Lewisport Gander School District asking if I could speak to the bus drivers to get their keys and to take their buses and to head to Gander. They were needed to take the people off the planes and bring them to various locations around the community. I remember talking to our bus drivers, secretaries, and custodians who, without a second thought, were ready to do whatever was needed. Our drivers took their keys, and before you knew it, there was a line of buses making their way from around the bay towards Gander. The next call I received was from the school district once again, looking for gym mats and anything else we could gather to send in to support the passengers. I recall the next day and the days following loading a cube van that the schools in the New West Valley area in Lumsden had procured and sent our way to add to the community's contributions. Now, I'm not quite sure what the weight restrictions on a cube van are, but I assure you it was exceeded. I don't think you could have fit a toothpick into that van, and we prayed that the springs would last by the time it hit Gander. I'm eternally grateful that there are no weight scales between Centerville, Indian Bay, and Gander, because I'm pretty sure we would have got fined for what we sent in. In 2004, my tale evolved somewhat. I became the principal of Gander Collegiate, and in the fall of that year, I was called to the office by our secretary. And imagine my surprise when she looked at me with a sort of a devilish smile and said, "It's the Prime Minister's office." Of course, I thought she was joking or someone was being funny. Unbeknownst to me, as the principal of GC, I had been invited with other principals in Gander, as well as representatives from the community and surrounding areas, to listen and meet Prime Minister Paul Martin at the time, as well as President George W. Bush in Halifax. They wished to express their gratitude following the events of 9/11. My initial thoughts were that someone else should go. Maybe, the former principal, Mr. Pittman at the time, someone on staff or someone from the district office. I was told, and I told this to the person from the PM's office, and the response was quite memorable. She said, "No, Mr. Drover, we want you, because you have been cleared by CSIS, the RCMP, the U.S. Secret Service, as well as the PM's office." So I went. Now, let me tell you, I have used this little piece of information every now and again with my darling wife, Mrs. Drover, because when we have discussions from time to time, you see, because I'm pretty sure she don't have the same level of clearance that I do. And it has certainly worked in my favor from time to time. So it has worked to my benefit. One of the things, though, that I took from that experience was that as the principal of Gander Collegiate, I was one of the gatekeepers now for GC's involvement during that historical time. Over the years, we have had countless people come to our school to see where they stayed. Others come to see where part of it happened, and that is in no small part due to the success of the musical Come From Away. We have received people from the New York Port Authority, the New York Fire Department, some who were in the Twin Towers at the time, relatives of passengers from Pennsylvania and the Pentagon, all searching for a connection of sorts. We bring them in, show them the banner that the passengers signed before they left. We never rush them, but let them read and absorb the many words that are written in many languages. Simple phrases of gratitude that speak volumes to everyone in unique and moving ways. We show them the cafeteria, the lobby where the phone lines were set up, and the TVs that broadcasted the first terrific images to the passengers in that fateful time. We have also had requests from visitors who don't get the message, or didn't get the message. One summer I had a request from a film crew from Europe who wanted to come to GC to do a short film. They arrived with two young men who stayed during 9/11, innocent enough. They wanted to highlight a love affair between one of the young men and a young female passenger. Again, innocent enough. One of the young men was enjoying the attention of the director, while his friend was moved at being back at the place that offered him shelter, security, and compassion. I quickly realized that they had some unique ideas for this film, ideas that I didn't believe were reflective and or representative of the message our schools and or our communities conveyed during the events surrounding 9/11. Needless to say, I said no to their ideas, and they went away. For those that come to our school, and I suspect the same is for St. Paul's Intermediate and Gander Academy, they come for something more meaningful. For me, 21 years ago, when a madman threw spears of evil and hate at the innocent, the people of this area threw up a shield of caring, compassion, and kindness, not expecting anything in return and acting purely out of instinct. It was simply what you do when you see your fellow man in need. We know that there are people who don't and can't understand this. We see them time and again. The 9/11 legacy of GC is to stand with those who stood for those in need. We are a small piece of that shield. We stand to show that good people with good intentions still and always will exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. That's a great perspective, and I think for many people it will be a great eye-opener to how broad the support was for the events that took place in Gander and the surrounding communities that we tend to get named in a lot of the stories, and Centerville certainly doesn't. And Greg was at the time the principal of a school there, and he and his school and his community played a very important role, as did all the communities in the surrounding area, the Loop area we call it, that many of you would never have realized would have had such an important role in this. And I think the enduring value of the story and how the visitations to the school since then, the interest of people in seeing it is testimony to the to how profoundly impacted people were by what we think, as Greg said, was simply people doing what people should do. Thanks for that, Greg. Our next presenter is Rhonda Lane, and as I said, she's at the time was working with Allied Aviation, which is a aviation service provider at the airport here. Rhonda.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share some stories that I had the privilege to be a part of on 9/11. First, let me tell you a little bit about me. I was born and bred in Gander and have been working at the Gander International Airport for most of the past 33 years in different capacities. I've also been a local tour guide for 30 plus years. My first job at the airport was working at the information counter, and we had to give tours of the mural. For those of you who have not seen it, you need to head on up there soon. I loved it so much that I became a tour guide in my spare time, and I'm still guiding. So I've had the opportunity of sharing these 9/11 stories ever since it's happened. So let me tell you a little bit more. At that time, I was working with Allied Aviation. I currently work with Canada Border Services Agency at the airport, still. Allied is the ground handling company that handled all of the aircraft and passengers that week that diverted in. Interestingly, much of what happened at the airport remains as untold stories, simply because we were working behind security doors, and no one could see how the airport personnel handled the monumental task at hand. On the morning of September the 11th, 2001, I reported to work as usual. At that time, I was wearing two hats with the company. I was one of 5 shift managers in operations. That job of a shift manager was basically to look after everything an aircraft and crew would need during a stopover in Gander. I was also the supervisor of passenger services. So I worked with 6 customer service agents to handle the passenger side of charters and diversions. I remember what a beautiful morning it was, and the temperature was supposed to be abnormally high for September. So I decided to wear my counter agent dress and heels to work that day, as opposed to my more practical ops uniform. First mistake of the day. I recall being in our manager's office, having a chat with him, when the other shift manager on duty came in saying, "You've got to come see this." How many people said that, I wonder, that day? "You've got to come see this." We went out to the TV in our crew lounge and saw a replay of what had just happened in New York. Just like everyone else in the world, we stared at the TV in disbelief. I recall kind of freezing for just a moment or two. Soon after the tragedy in New York City was unfolding, we got word that U.S. airspace was closing and that we would be getting some company. The Emergency Coordination Center at the airport was activated immediately, and then the phone lines lit up in operations and the radio didn't stop, with airline operations and pilots contacting us saying that they were diverting to Gander. The next few hours presented us with an enormous task that we could never, ever have imagined. We called in all of our employees, shift managers, ramp attendants, mechanics, customer service agents, and admin, which only totaled about 35 people at the time. While we were rounding up everyone, the staff that were on shift were busy directing and parking 38 wide-bodied aircraft, without incident, I might add. Can I just say that the fellas working the ramp that day made some magic happen. After 38 airplanes were parked, it was determined that we had no more room. I recall answering the radio and having to turn away more aircraft that wanted to divert. We just couldn't handle any more. After they were all on the ground and parked, I remember us thinking, what do we do now with all these people? Keep in mind that we were used to dealing with diversions, but this was a diversion times 38. Part of our normal job was to find a place for 300 or 400 people to stay during a diversion, but not almost 6,700 people. We soon found out that the provincial government was finding places for our visitors to stay, so that was a huge relief. As the afternoon went on, it was a case of hurry up and wait, and jump in to help anywhere you could. Passengers were not permitted to deplane the aircraft until all the security checks were completed, which took quite a number of hours. This, in turn, created further issues. By now, each aircraft needed their labs dumped and their water topped up, as you can imagine. So our ramp attendants took turns with our one lab truck and our one water truck, going from aircraft to aircraft servicing them. By the time they were done, they started all over again. We also had only 8 sets of stairs to access all these aircraft. In order to communicate with the pilots on each aircraft, we had to ensure that they were on our frequency, Allied's frequency. So one of our employees went to each aircraft with a sign that read 129.1 on it. By the time they were done, everyone was on the same frequency and we were able to communicate. It became like one big group chat. Another issue that the crews were dealing with was the fact that some folks on board wanted to smoke. Some of the captains threw the rules out the window and turned the rear galley into a smoke room, with the rear door open, of course. I recall getting called over to the information counter at some point in the afternoon to pick up a donation of Nicorette from Shoppers Drug Mart. Really. I quickly delivered it to as many aircraft as I could, and I think at that point, that's when I realized, and maybe it's in retrospect, I realized these people are going to be well looked after, right down to the Nicorette. By evening, we were given the go-ahead to start deplaning, and so it began. Passengers were only allowed to bring their carry-on luggage, and all checked bags remained on board. Their first stop in the airport was Customs and Immigration, of course. They had called in all their 7 employees and were ready to start clearing them. After they cleared customs, they came into the International Lounge, and every passenger was registered with the Red Cross. People from the Salvation Army came to help with this also enormous task. When they were done getting registered, they went over by the snack bar area, which is now the new bar. You need to go check that out too. And there was a pile of food. For those of you who are not from here, have you had enough food since you've been here? It's very cultural. We like our food. And so when anything good happens, when anything bad happens, we bring food. And so I remember there being a pile of food from our catering company, of course, at the airport. I specifically remember Greco Pizza and KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. I remember the KFC specifically because at 3 a.m. I had some cold KFC and it was delicious. And I don't like cold KFC. By that time, 3 a.m., the temperature was much lower than it was earlier in the day, and I was wearing a blazer from one of the other shift managers, not sure where my shoes were at that point. I'd fallen on the ramp, cut my knee, and the shift managers and ops had no blazers on, no ties, and their sleeves were rolled up. We were looking a little disheveled, but the adrenaline was still on bust. It really was that whole week. Anyway, I digress. After the passengers grabbed some food to go, they went to a small table and were told where they were going to be housed. Then they exited the terminal and got on a school bus, and the bus drivers were on strike, as you heard, to head to their destination. I recall after the first aircraft deplaned and they had cleared customs and registered with the Red Cross, they went straight for the payphones. Remember payphones? Remember those things? So that really, of course, we understood that they just needed to talk to home. They had to let someone know where they were, and they wanted to know that everybody was okay. But we realized that that was really going to slow down the process. So we said, we can't get rid of the payphones. After they left, we tried to figure out what to do. So we took black garbage bags and put over them and put out of order on them, and it worked like a charm. The rest of the passengers didn't touch them. I went home at about 10:30, the next morning. We had split ourselves into different shifts because we knew it was going to be a long week by that time. Then that evening, we came back and started checking in all those passengers that had just deplaned, one aircraft load at a time. Of course, back then, we just looked after charters, so our check-in process was all manual, so we literally checked in every single passenger. One of my pet peeves that week was that passenger manifests generally were not in alphabetical order. It was amazing how the airport community came together. As we were checking in people, we got calls from other companies, other airlines, FBOs up there saying, Rhonda, do you need some help? I'm like, yes, please, come and help us. We had food delivered to the counter. It was like a little potluck in our back office. It was incredible how much support we had. And while we were busy at the counter, the ramp guys and the ops were crazy busy as well. Some other passengers found their own way home. They didn't wait to go back on board the aircraft they came in on, so their bags were left behind. Because of regulations, of course, an aircraft cannot fly with a person's bag if that person is not on board. So we had to do a positive bag match during boarding for a lot of the flights, slowed things down. In the end, there were 206 bags left behind. I had the wonderful privilege of finding where in the world their rightful owners were and FedExing them to them. It took me about 2 weeks. The last aircraft departed Gander at 6:30 p.m. on Sunday, U.S. Airways. That's a time I think is etched in a lot of our minds. We do realize that we are certainly not the only airport that had diversions that day and that week. Certainly not. And I'm sure the other airports all dealt with the task at hand the best way they knew how, as we did. I do know that we learned a lot that week, mostly how an airport community can pull together and help each other in any circumstance. We figured it out together. It felt like a well-oiled machine. Maybe not that well-oiled. Was it perfect? Certainly not. But we got it done, and we have stories to tell. To conclude, I want to add that even though we continue to tell our stories of what happened here during that week, I hope we never forget the tragedy that caused all of this to transpire. There are still many people hurting to this day. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rhonda. Great insight into, I think, an element of the response here that maybe people don't think of much, because obviously a lot of things had to happen before the first passenger landed in a local church hall or public room and had a sandwich presented to them there. And the logistical challenges at the airport and all the professionals at the airport that had to work through all of that before any passenger was able to advance to the next stage of actually being accommodated here in our community. And it's something that, it's a story that really hasn't been told very much, but as you hear Rhonda speak, there's light bulbs going on. Of course, there had to be an awful lot of challenges in that at the airport long before people got into town. So thanks for coming and sharing that, Rhonda. Next up, we have Beulah Cooper, who has a number of connections to this story. I think the one she is here to speak with us on tonight is in her capacity as I said earlier, a long time driving force behind the local Royal Canadian Legion here in Gander, which the Legion itself, of course, played a significant role in the accommodation of passengers, and Beulah certainly played a role in that. So, Beulah, it's all yours.
Thank you. My story basically revolves around the Legion, with the famous tray of sandwiches. I received a call from the Legion that day asking me to bring a tray of sandwiches to the Legion. I never questioned what it was for, what was going on. They wanted a tray of sandwiches, so I made them a tray. And when I took it down, I asked what was going on, and they told me that there was a plane load of people coming in, and they would be staying for the night. So I thought, well, I better stay for the night too. And I waited, and it was wee hours in the morning when they came in, and the first thing I done, and I'm glad Oz Fudge is not here, first thing I done was take 4 men down to the hotel to make phone calls. And then I brought them back, and I took 3 women down to make phone calls. And that's how it started. And I done whatever I could to help them out. 3 of the women that I took to the hotel, they ended up staying at my house. I had to clear it with the Red Cross first, and there was no problem as long as they were back in the morning, because they never knew when they were going to get a call for the planes leave. And so anyway, one of them, Monica Burke, I'm still in touch with her today. She lives in Seattle. She came to visit me 4 or 5 times. She even brought her mother from Hinesville, Georgia, and they all stayed with me each time. She was planning on coming back last year, but because of COVID, she changed her flight. She was coming back this year, but because of work issues, now she's hoping to come next year. But she knows her bed is there whenever she comes. And I befriended Hannah and Dennis O'Rourke, and Dennis's nephew and his girlfriend. And as you walk in the Legion, the back left corner where the come from away signs are, that's where they spent their time. I done everything I could to try to get them to come up and stay at my house. They could have had their own bedroom, their own phone, their own TV, everything, but they would not leave the Legion. They were afraid of missing a phone call. And I can understand putting my feet in their shoes. But anyway, I did get them to come up for showers. And Anna and I had to drive around town, and her son was a fireman. And he didn't make it out of the Twin Towers. They found his body September 24th in the stairwell. I've been to New York to visit her. She's been to Gander to visit me, and we talk on the phone all the time. And the last time I spoke to her was a couple of weeks ago. And then I took people over town shopping. I looked after kids for their parents to do things. And I tried to organize a few things at the Legion. And we had 144 passengers from Aer Lingus Flight 105 staying at the Legion. Plus, we had 10 working in the kitchen, volunteers helping out. There was one young fella there that had a cooking course, so he helped Wally, our president at the time, to cook the meals. And there was one incident, apparently one young fella had too much to drink. So he spent the last night, you know where. They figured they'd take him up and put him in a cell, let him get a good night's sleep so he'd make the flight the next morning. And then there was another incident where some of them didn't know, they were really upset. They didn't know if they should leave the Legion, stay there, or what, even go outside. But we had a lot of people there helping out. It wasn't just me, it was a lot of people. And I've made so many friends through these people, it's unbelievable. And people have phoned me, sent me cards, letters, people I didn't even know. And on a Thursday night before they left on a Friday, we got a call from the Salvation Army. The people were moving out of the Salvation Army camp. And they said they were going to pick up the crowd at the Legion and take them to the camp. And they said, the only way we're going to go to the camp is if you bring a shotgun. They weren't leaving the Legion. And when they did leave, we all lined up at the bar and we sang, "For he's a jolly good fellow, and so long it's been good to know you." There weren't very many dry eyes when I had that Legion. But I've been to New York to visit Hannah. She's been to Gander to visit me. And every time we go to the shows, they always seat us together. She holds my hand, we cry together, we laugh together. And somewhere in the wings, for sure, there's a producer or somebody from Come From Away keeping their eye on us. I found that out the last trip I went. But basically, that is my story. Like I said, mostly I done was help people, take them, over town and back and forth to my house for showers, and that's basically it. Thank you.
Thanks, Beulah, and many of you here would know that Beulah's name is one of the names used in the musical Come From Away, and her story is, part of her story is woven into that script as well. But, Beulah is an example of one of thousands of people in this community who responded the way Beulah did during that time frame. And I don't know if she mentioned that the aircraft that was actually ended up at the Legion was an Aer Lingus flight, an Irish flight. And but it may make it easier to understand why, after 3 or 4 days being forced to sleep in a licensed drinking establishment, they refused to leave. But thank you for telling your story, Beulah. Next up, we have Ethni Daly, who, as I said earlier, she's happily, I would think, retired teacher now, but at the time of September 11th, 2001, was a teacher at Lakewood Academy in nearby Glenwood, approximately 20 kilometers from here. So Ethni's going to share her story with us.
Thank you, sir. Hi, everyone. As I've listened to my colleagues speak, part of me wishes I might have picked some stories to tell you other than the ones that I did, because you've reminded me of things that I haven't thought about in years. And I'm sorry I only have 15 minutes. But I was a teacher at Lakewood Academy, which is a tiny K-12 school with just about 200 students. And I had the honor of serving there for 25 years, having retired in June. And with my retirement now, there is no one left at the school who was around in 2001. So I taught English, math, French, and history. And the history part of my teaching assignment will come back to, I hope, maybe bring a tear to your eye in a few moments when I tell you one of my little stories. I had the honor of going to see the play when it was put off here for the local folks. And 2 of the stories from the play are stories that I recognized as Lakewood Academy stories. The story about the barbecues, and for those of you who have seen the play, I hope that makes you giggle. But the one I'm going to explain in a little bit more detail was the story about the Jewish rabbi and the kosher food. As a staff, rather like some of the other guys, we broke ourselves into shifts because we knew it would be a long week. And when I came back to school after having been home for some sleep and to see my children who were in high school at the time, a lady from one of the airplanes came up to me in the front office and she said, "I've watched you helping others for the last few minutes. Could I bring an issue to your attention that needs to be dealt with?" And I said, "Certainly, tell me what it is." She said, "There are some observant Jewish folks from my plane in the building, and they are hungry." Now, gang, to a Newfoundlander telling us that a guest is hungry is just about as bad as it can get. So I thanked the lady and said I would see what I could do. And then I was stumped. There is no practicing Jewish community in Gander or the area. And I had to try and find some kosher food for our hungry guests. And I had an epiphany. I called the secretary of the director of the school board, who was a lovely woman, and explained my predicament. And she called the airport Is this story making sense to you? She called the airport because, of course, the folks at the airport have kosher meals ready for when planes are diverted. And before I knew it, less than an hour had passed, gang, before a delivery truck showed up at the front of the school with an enormous box of frozen airplane dinners, all with the official kosher stamp on them, for our Jewish friends. I thanked them. I didn't know how they had gotten there at that time. And then I was faced with another conundrum because I couldn't get on the school PA system and said, "Would the hungry Jewish folks please come down for a snack?" I didn't think my mother would approve of that. So I had to get on the PA and say, "Would the lady who came down with some dietary issues please come back?" And sure enough, she did. She was amazed that there was kosher food, and she went and rounded up the folks that she knew were hungry, and down they came. And that's when I met the gentleman who became my friend, Rabbi Levi Sudak, who calls me every year on September 11th. He and his faith community invited my husband and me to London for a beautiful holiday many years ago. They had us to supper at the Lord's cricket grounds in London, and I remember when I came back and told my father where I had been, the owner of Cirque du Soleil on one side and the owner or the manager of the Rolling Stones on the other, and I'm telling Dad these stories, and I remember in his thick Irish accent he said to me, "'Twas far from it you were raised." But when the rabbi came down, I remember he put out his hands as though in prayer, and he said to me, "How did you know?" Meaning, how did you know that we were hungry? And I said, "Rabbi, you're a person of faith, and I'm a person of faith. Although they are different faiths, they are the same God. And you were in need, and it was brought to my attention." And that was the beginning of a 21-year friendship that has continued since. So I wanted to give you those details of the one little snippet in the play that has an authentic story behind it. That story came to my attention when I was in the office, and so did the story of Peter. And if you have a Kleenex, you may need to get it out, because whenever I tell this story, I choke up, because it's a story about a son and a mom, and I was the mom of 2 teenagers at the time, and 3 teenagers, 2 sons and a daughter. But I was doing my shift in the office, sending faxes, because a lot of folks wanted to get information home, and so we dial fax numbers and help people communicate that way. And while I was sending faxes, the school phone rang, and I picked it up, pardon me, and a lady with a beautiful Australian accent identified herself. And she said, "I'm looking for my son, Peter. He left Australia some time ago, I believe that must have been many weeks previously, to backpack around Europe. And we argued before he left. I was vexed that he wasn't going back to school. He was going to backpack around Europe, and I could only imagine what he was going to be doing. He communicated with me in the last week and said he was flying from the UK to the US on September 11th. So she knew her son had been in the air on September 11th, but had no idea with what airline or what his final destination was to have been. And she simply said to me, "Is he with you?" She had spoken to the Red Cross and gotten a list of the local facilities that were hosting folks. And I was perhaps her 10th, 12th, 14th call that she had made, retelling her story, hoping that she would find Peter. And I have a scrapbook here that you're welcome to look at once we clue up. But bored one evening, I started typing up a manifest of the folks that were with us. And so I put her on hold and assured her that I'd be a few minutes while I checked our list, but I would go and look for the name on our list. And my mother had passed away a few years previously. And I remember as I went down through the list, saying the Catholic prayer, And I'm just going to say the first few lines of it because it kept going through my head as I looked for Peter's name. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who sought your help was refused. And that kept going through my head as a mom, repeating this prayer from my mom, trying to help this Australian mom. And I found Peter's name. He was with us at Lakewood. And the joy, and I'm filling up now, you might hear it in my voice, the joy to go back to the phone and tell her that he was safe with us will stay with me forever. And of course, she wanted to speak to him. But because of the kindness of the people of Glenwood and Appleton, he was not in the building. We had a sign-out chart in the front lobby so that folks could tell us where they were in the event the calls came to head back to the airport. And Peter had signed it, and I don't remember where he was. He was either out on a boat with some folks fishing or out on a hike or doing something in nature out in the community. So I had to tell her that he was safe with us, but that he wasn't in the building. And I assured her that I would get him to call her. And I said goodbye, and I went out and parked on the bench in the front lobby. And I waited for whom I thought she had described, the Australian surfer. Now that has many ramifications. And I kept waiting, and eventually I knew the young man headed into the school must be Peter. And up I go. Are you offering me a beverage? As long as it's not alcoholic, I would not. Thank you. And Peter came in through the doors, and I walked up and kissed him on the cheek. Now, his reaction was profound. This 40-something woman spontaneously kissing him, and I said, "That's from your mother." And he started to cry. So I told him what had transpired, and I said, "She's waiting for you to call her." And he said, "I don't have any money." I said, "That's not important to me at the moment." And I took him into the principal's office and showed him how to make the international call and waited until I heard him say, "Hi, Mom." And then I closed the door and came away. And, probably 15 minutes he was on the phone to Australia. I have no idea who paid the phone bill, as we didn't care about those things. But Peter got to talk to his mom, and that's one of the highlight stories for me. Another one was about the gentleman with the tweed jacket with the patches on his elbows who went out for a walk every day around our parking lot. Now, as I said, we were only a school of 200 people, so we didn't have a giant parking lot. And God bless this gentleman, he would only walk the perimeter of the rectangular parking lot and then repeat. He wouldn't go out onto the main road. And finally, after a day or two, I went out and walked with him, and I asked him why he kept to the perimeter of the lot. And he said, "I'm afraid I will be eaten by a moose." He was terrified. So we had a lovely biology lesson on the gentleness of the local moose. And the next day, he went for a much longer walk. And as my colleagues have mentioned, the flights left on a Friday. And once again, I was in the office doing my shift. And the reason that I referenced being a history teacher is a connection with this little note that I'm going to read. And it's dated the 15th of September, 2001. And I'm not going to tell you the gentleman's name, but I am going to read you the content that took my legs out from under me in the staff room, in the office that day. It is not possible for me to tell you how I felt during my stay with you. Only once have I been treated in a similar way. This was when, as a child, I was liberated in Holland in 1945. You wonderful Canadians have not changed. I have nothing to add, but thank you, thank you, thank you. And as this note came off the fax machine, there are only a few times in my life when I can say it took my breath away. And this note from Warner took my breath away, given that I was a teacher and I understood the significance of someone comparing what had happened here to the liberation of Holland in 1945. How much time do I have, Brian? 1 minute. That's just not enough. I'll have to leave out the story of the Russian man and the beautiful English lady. That would be me. When I played my Rimsky-Korsakov CDs and he wanted to teach me how to dance. In closing, I'm going to read one more letter that I have the original of framed in my den, hanging with a copy of Warner's note. And this will be my conclusion for you today. To the staff, pupils, and friends of Lakewood Academy. The barbarous acts of savagery inflicted in the United States cannot be ignored, as it is because of them that we are so inconvenienced in our routines. What the experience of the last 24 hours in the communities of Glenwood and Lakewood has given to us is that through acts of genuine and spontaneous generosity, and outside of the issues of democracy and freedom, human decency, embodied in community, will prevail. It has been a unique privilege to be so inconvenienced, for there can be no more noble proof that, in spite of the world's horrors, there is, beyond any doubt, hope. Thank you for preserving that hope, and it's simply signed, a grateful visitor. Take my business.
Well, thank you, Ethni, for that. Those sort of poignant, personal vignettes and stories of individual situations that occurred, obviously by the thousands, in the scenario that we experienced during that time frame. And as a theater critic might say, I laughed, I cried, it was a triumph. So thank you, Ethni, for that. Our final speaker, Lane Zizka, hope we got that right, is visiting us, I think, for the first time from Fort Worth, Texas, and is here to talk to us about, I guess, her experience in researching and writing a master's thesis on the events in Newfoundland during and after 9/11. So I look forward to hearing from you, Lane.
Hello, I did indeed fly in this afternoon, and I'm thrilled to be here with you. The stories that I'm going to share today are a little bit different because I didn't live through them. So I will start off with a quote. When they stepped off the plane, they were strangers. By midweek, they were friends. By the end of the week, they were family. That was repeated to me over and over. They're the words of Claude Elliott speaking of those 5 days following 9/11. And he was right. I myself have never felt such a familial kinship with people I had never met until today. I started researching 9/11 in Newfoundland about 5 years ago, in 2017. I was a junior in college at the time, and in that time I talked to countless individuals who were here during those 5 days, and those who have continued to tell their stories. I've spent years writing about, presenting on, and telling their stories and what it means for identity and narrative and community resilience, something which seems to be absolutely abundant here. I heard stories of the most extraordinary things, of Hugo Boss, of five-star generals, of wish kids, of elk hunting. I heard stories of the mundane, the phone calls home, of the fried chicken, the cups of tea, and the toilet paper. I heard stories of the gut-wrenching, of being told that those two towers in New York no longer existed. I swore I wasn't going to cry. But mostly, I heard stories of the most general people someone could ever hope to encounter, of welcoming arms amid the confusion and distress. Diane Davis once told me that people jump in to help. It's just part of the culture here. That's a direct quote. I've had the honor and privilege to share all of those stories, but I realized something recently. I've never really spoken about my own. You see, I was only about 5 when 9/11 happened. I remember seeing the footage on TV, my dad yelling, and a whirl of whispers the rest of the day. I only knew something was off, that a plane had crashed into a building and it was bad. I processed it the only way a 5-year-old knows how to. Finger painting, which definitely gave my teachers a fright. But what 5-year-old me couldn't know was that in those days, out of the literal ashes of a national tragedy, the international community was coming together, and it would go on to shape my adult life for the better. But there's another layer to this story, and it's confession time. I am a huge musical theater fan. And in writing this speech, my mom really encouraged me to emphasize that huge part. I have been since I was young. My parents raised me on Les Mis, and I think I might have taken it just a little bit too far because, I'm now in another country talking about it. So it's really no surprise that I was trying desperately to be tuned into the theater scene from my suburban Houston home. I remember around 2013, there was an article in the arts section of the Houston Chronicle about a musical based on 9/11. I remember thinking, wow, that sounds really interesting and meaningful, and it never left me. In 2017, when Come From Away opened on Broadway, the puzzle pieces began falling into place and a new story opened up before my eyes. I listened to the cast recording and was hooked. It was music that bit at my soul, that made me feel deeply and transported me. That same semester, my then professor assigned a project covering contemporary management of a crisis. My two passions would collide. What I loved most was telling and hearing stories, and I knew that there were stories to be told in Newfoundland. I remember frantically emailing every radio and TV station, newspaper, organization, and town hall, and I finally got an email back from one place, the Gander Town Hall, with 3 names and phone numbers for Oz Fudge, Diane Davis, and Claude Elliott. My Come From Away fan heart could not take it. One Friday in November, and I know this because it was Remembrance Day, I called each one of them to introduce myself, and they were somehow totally unfazed that a stranger from Texas was calling their cell phone. Claude was ready to tell me his entire story right then and there. In the next couple weeks, I interviewed 10 people, from citizen to plane passenger. I had never encountered such kind, generous, and welcoming people. Their stories betrayed a culture that was beyond the Southern hospitality that I had grown up with. When I started my master's, I knew I wanted to explore these stories deeper. There were so many people that I hadn't talked to. 10 people was just not enough. So many stories untold. In those few conversations, I had felt so connected to these people and this place. Can you even feel that with a place that you've never been, with people that you have never met? There was so much rich story that I know many before me had recognized, and I couldn't help but want to revel in it and just listen. I had the idea that communities use their stories and narratives to shape their current lives, but to also narrate themselves and their communities in ways that they see fit, like being kind, generous, and resilient. Not only were these stories and narratives being passed from person to person in Newfoundland and among friends, but they were being told on stage across the world every night. I embarked on an epic mission to talk to as many people as possible, from Newfoundland citizens to plane passengers and Come From Away casting creatives. I ended up sitting down with 32 individuals. I talked to Beverly Bass about her life and her leadership, to Karen Mills about running the Comfort Inn and caring for flight crews and passengers, to Joel Hatch and Kevin Carolyn about portraying a real-life individual nightly. Brian Mosher, in classic fashion, gave me a 3-hour, 2-part interview. No one is surprised whatsoever. These people acted as connectors for me. As I interviewed them, I would meet more and more people and hear more and more stories. While I started as the researcher, I soon became the subject of someone else's book. Thank you, Elias. I never dreamed that when I set out to write a paper in my junior year of college and was able to tie in a musical that I love, that it would become an integral part of my personal narrative. In my academic discipline, a good portion of the literature on crises tell us that in order to solidify a narrative, we need to tell it and retell it to others, but also to ourselves. I think about how my own narrative has changed in the process of gathering these stories over years and years. This time in my life has changed me immensely. Since I started this project, I have graduated college, earned my master's degree, and now moved to a new state, Colorado, to begin my PhD. And I'm happy to be known as the come-from-away girl in my departments and among my friends. Believe me, I will take on that identity very willingly. But beyond that, I have found deep connection, imitable kindness, and a lifelong family. I found a fellow horned frog in Beverly Bass. I found a third set of grandparents in Nick and Diane Marson. I have found a witty friend in Diane Davis. And these small but meaningful connections with so many others. Growing up, 9/11 was a tragedy, something that we memorialized every year by playing the images of horror. It is something that is indelibly scarred on the formative years of my generation, a turning point in the way that we grew up. But it's also a time that people came together, and the best of humanity was on display. And for me, it's not some nameless kindness. It's Pat Woodford, who worked in the air traffic control tower when he wasn't scheduled and gave away his car to be used. It's Beulah Cooper, who saw a woman in need and formed a lifelong bond. It's Diane Vay Morawski, who stayed for days at Gander Academy. It's Brian Mosher, coordinating events live on air for the benefit of the guests. It's Brian Williams, who thought this weird little Texan might want to speak at an event like this, an honor I am thrilled to take on. This kindness has a face. So when I think of 9/11, I tear up thinking of the tragedy and of that footage sheared into my brain. But I also tear up thinking of these good people. So for me, this trip feels like a homecoming, years in the making. In all of my interviewing, there are so many words that stick with me, but I thought I would leave you with a few choice ones from Pat Woodford. September 11th, 2001, there were approximately 6,800 strangers dropped into our town. During the next 5 days, we made 6,500 new friends. Don't ask me why the number changed. 5 days after they landed, we lost 6,500 family members. One day of sadness on September 11th, 2001, there was so much joy that came into our lives. Because of the friendships that we made, it would never justify September 11th, but I was just so glad to be part of helping these people because they brought a lot of joy back into our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine, and what a great fresh perspective to hear from someone who has sort of, since these things all happened and since the story is starting to be told, has become aware and has spent a quite considerable time and effort sort of peeling back the layers of all that and revealing what it all really meant and learning from it and so on. And to me personally, that's probably the most redeeming thing about this whole story. It certainly isn't about, the notoriety or the recognition that places like Gander have gotten because of this, because of what happened here and so on. But it's the telling of the story, regardless of where the story is set. But the telling of the story to people who maybe weren't born or maybe were only 5 years old when it happened and didn't fully comprehend what was happening at the time, but who are hearing and learning of it now and are learning lessons in the importance of kindness and compassion and how profound it can be for people in times of crisis, and how important it is, as little as we think of it, as we're doing it ourselves. And I've seen that myself personally from having to, whether it's doing a Zoom call with a sixth grade class from Missouri who are learning about the story in their class and want to talk to the mayor of Gander, and receiving bundles of letters from high school classes in California multiple years consecutively who are being taught the story and who want to thank the people from this area for what they did and tell us how it's made them reflect on how they treat other people themselves, people that weren't born on September 11th, 2001. It's those sorts of stories. I mean, I've had to go speak to master's classes at University of Southern California on their Center on Public Diplomacy about this story and the impact of individual interactions between people being portrayed through the arts and having such an impact on international relations. That who would think, or another master's class in communications in crisis management, and all these lessons that are being learned, are literally around the world by the telling of this story, is so important, and irrelevant who's referenced as being the where it came from, but the fact that these lessons are being learned is, I think, the most important enduring reward that any of the people that stepped forward during that time frame have received. So thank you all for speaking, and we do, excuse me, we have some time. I don't know how much time, but we do have some time available if anybody wants to ask a question, make a comment. I don't know if we have any microphones in the audience or not. We do? Okay, yes, right in front of the ambassador. So if anybody would want to ask a question, make a comment, ask a question of anybody individually, make a general comment, doesn't matter. Don't be shy. Anybody out there want to? Oh, the ambassador.
Maybe if I go first, others will follow who are more deserving, but Mayor, thank you, and thank all five of you. What an amazing, amazing evening. So in the course of my career, I am not often struck by the inadequacy of what my words could add to an evening. But I just want to say to the five people on this stage, to the people of Gander, Mayor, to you as representative of the people of Gander, it is impossible to overstate the importance of what happened in Gander 21 years ago. Obviously, this was one of the most unspeakably difficult days in the history of the United States, in the history of democracies in the world. It was unspeakable evil. And out of that unspeakable evil, however, came one of the most incredible statements of humanity and positivity, and that was the reaction of the people of Gander to the appearance of almost 7,000 strangers in their community who, it's been so well stated, who were embraced as visitors, as friends, and ultimately as members of the family. And so I have said that being named the United States Ambassador to Canada is an honor of a lifetime for me. But in my 9 months as U.S. Ambassador, I can't remember an occasion where I felt more honored to be a guest of a community and the guest of a town as I am in my presence in Gander. One of the things people may not know is that as the U.S. Ambassador to Canada, I am the personal representative of the President of the United States to this country. And I don't say this lightly. In fact, I can say that in the 9 months I have been here, I have not said this, but on behalf of President Joe Biden, on behalf of the people of the United States of America, I thank you for what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And as I said at the beginning, we're honored to have you and your fellow representatives of the U.S. government here with us. As a country, you are more than a neighbor, and more than a friend. And I think in times of crisis, these things reveal themselves even more clearly. And from, I think I can speak on behalf of our communities and perhaps of our country, that what was done during that time frame was done as we routinely say, was what we would have done for anyone in similar circumstances. We mean that, but we have a special bond with the U.S., and we felt privileged and blessed to have been given the opportunity. Because usually when you see these sorts of situations unfold around the world, you have the compassion. I think that's a human instinct. It's not unique to Gander or Newfoundland or Canada for that matter. But you have the instinct to want to help. And usually there's nothing you can do other than perhaps write a check to someone that you hope will do something good with it for those people that are experiencing that catastrophe. And in our case, when we would have been going through those emotions and watching those events unfolding, an opportunity to help literally came out of the sky to us. So we are the ones that feel blessed and appreciative, I guess, of having the opportunity to do it. But thank you for coming here to be with us and for those kind words. Is there anyone else that would like to ask a question, make a comment? Anybody up here would like to, something came to their minds that they'd like to say? Here we go. Yes, Sheldon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is so interesting to see the diversity of all the stories that happened there. During 9/11, I was working with 103 Search and Rescue at the time, and our commanding officer told us next day, leave the hangar, go find the Red Cross in the airport, go volunteer. You need to get out and help with this. There's nothing that you can do here in the hangar right now. And so there was three of us, 3 civilians that left 103, and we went and volunteered with the Red Cross. And we ended up on telephones for that week. But it's so interesting because the stories that we had heard as we were going through doing the work there tied into every story that I heard on the stage here today. So I want to thank you all once again for everything that you did during that time. And it's interesting to see all the webs tied together and hear all the stories go together. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheldon. I should add that in addition to his own personal connection to this story, the gentleman that just spoke is also a town councillor here in Gander now, a newly minted town councillor about a year or so ago. Anyone else? I don't know what we're doing in terms of time. Does someone have to tap dance or something? Is there going to be dead air on television somewhere? Not exactly sure. Yeah, maybe. How about the Russian story?
If there's time, but I don't know.
Is there time? The official keeper of the time is Brian. Okay, please do it.
How much time do I have, Brian? Because I could make this one last a little while. 5 minutes, okay. So I want to repeat that these stories that I'm telling are not my stories. They're the stories of the communities of Glenwood and Appleton and the school called Lakewood Academy. And the room that I was teaching out of that year was in its original manifestation a cafeteria. So once we got our guests, we turned that room back into a cafeteria, and I packed up my teaching things. And the only thing that I left out was my CD player. Now, for those of you under the age of 20, you may not know what a CD player was. But having been a language teacher, I used it frequently for broadcast of French things. And when folks were in the cafeteria having something to eat, they wanted to get away from the news. We had televisions broadcasting in our library and our lobby and so on, but there were times when they just didn't want to see the pictures anymore. And in my feeble way to try and help, I had the CD player and I had a collection of CDs. Because when kids used to do seat work in my room, I didn't like it to be quiet. So one day I might play Brahms lullabies, the next day it might be Great Big Sea. Ambassador, if someone hasn't given you a Great Big Sea CD, we can look into that for you. It could be anything. If I saw a CD in a clearance bin, I bought it so that I could play it in my classroom and expose kids to something other than what they traditionally listen to. And one of the things that I had found in a clearance bin at some point in time was a Rimsky-Korsakov CD, hence the Russian story. And on this particular day, I believe it was Thursday, the day before the folks left, I happened to have the Korsakov CD playing in the cafeteria. And in comes my exuberant Russian friend. Who is playing proper Russian music? Who is it that is playing this proper Russian music while I am staying in Canada? And I said hello, and he started calling me beautiful English lady. I think he may have lost his glasses when he got off the plane. And it struck up a friendship. It was one of those thousands and thousands of little events that made connections between us and our guests. Him hearing Rimsky-Korsakov as he walked down the hall of the school touched a chord with him at home. And I know it must have been Thursday because my shift ended and it was time for me to go home to my own children. And he said, tomorrow when you come back, we will dance. I will teach you proper Russian dancing, beautiful English lady. And I thought, no, maybe this guy's been at the Legion or something. And the pity of it was the next day when I went back on the Friday for my shift, his plane had left. So I didn't get to dance with my Russian friend. And about 2 weeks later, knock came on my door of my classroom, and it was Jamie Jennings, our principal, and he had the most enormous bouquet of the longest stem roses ever I have seen. The stems on the roses themselves were about 2 feet long in this beautiful vase. I don't know where a florist in Newfoundland came up with this bouquet of 24 deep red roses. And the card inside simply said, "To the beautiful English lady, I will be back to dance."
So, I have a question. First, I have to say that even 21 years later, at telling your untold stories and all about Gander, you still have such respect for what happened in New York and mention it. No. Nope. Thank you, though. And I appreciate that, and I'm very grateful for that. It soothes my 9/11 soul. Okay, so enough of that. What I really want to know is how, during the days that the Plain people were here, how did you keep it together? Like, I can barely keep it together 21 years later. How did you approach people, help people, love people, and then go home, if you did go home, and take a nap, and not completely fall apart? Where did that strength come from? And don't say God. I know he was there. I know he's here. But how did you function and not lose yourself in the horror of what I was experiencing? For all of you, yeah.
Is this working? I have a very small, diminutive voice. I would hate not to be heard. I would like to hear what other folks have to say about that. But for me, as I mentioned, I had a husband and 3 teenage kids at home who simply had to get by. And I think all of us will say, folks were in need. And I expect it's because of the Newfoundland history, which had to be resilient in the face of very hard work from our grandparents and ancestors who came to the Rock and made a life out of living in this inhospitable place. It's part of Newfoundland DNA to have to help your neighbor. Would you guys agree with that? And so, me as a 40-something woman, when I met our visitors, it wasn't foreign to any of us in that helping a neighbor is not something that was new to our generation, but was multi-generational in order to survive. So whether it was Beulah making sandwiches or Allied Aviation making sure suitcases got managed, or an overloaded illegal delivery truck coming in from Centreville, there were so many needs that you just had to sit and to put on a CD and you made a connection with folks. And it was intense and constant, but it was a privilege because people were in need and we had the ability to help. I'm going to tell one more story. Have I got time, Brian? I told Brian this story in the lobby, and I said, I don't know if the audience is the right audience to tell the story, but I'm going to tell you ladies the story and hope everyone else can enjoy it. When we went home that first night after we had stripped down the school, because we had to put every belonging to each of our children away so that when our visitors left, we could unpack the children's belongings, their crayons and sneakers. It was just the first week of school, and we had to be able to put all the children's things back. And when I came back the next morning for my first shift, I did like I would do at home, and I went to check the bathroom to make sure it was clean. And I was astounded. Because when I went in the washroom, some ladies from the community, and I never, ever, ever, I'm assuming it was ladies, I never, ever, ever found out who they were. They had filled the counter in the ladies' room with sanitary products. Now, there was not a corner store in Glenwood to have bought these products from. So some woman from the community obviously called 5 friends who called 5 friends, and they gathered together whatever they had in their homes. And during the night, while we waited for the buses, they filled the bathroom with things that they thought the ladies would need. And when you say, how did you do it? Folks needed things. And it wasn't until they went home that we had time to let the adrenaline stop and realize what had happened. But there was a need, and Newfoundlanders tend to respond when there is a need. There, I wasn't going to share that one.
I think that's a really good question, Jeanette, because I think adrenaline really was a really big factor that whole week for a lot of people. And I think that, it was need after need, and so you just tried to figure out the issue at hand, then you move on to the next and to the next and to the next. And you really didn't, like you say, didn't sleep much. And so when you did get a chance, you really did sleep as much as you could, and then you went back at it. So it wasn't probably till retrospect, thinking back about all the different stories, and there are so many. I mean, we could all go on all night, but there are so many that really do tear at the heartstrings if you just let yourself. But I don't think we could let ourselves. I think that was it. There was just so much. I don't know if that answers the question a bit.
I think that everyone said it much better than me, but one of the things that always struck me in Newton Centreville, and I said this earlier to some of my colleagues, when we were loading the van, there were families that really couldn't afford some of the food items they were putting in boxes. And one of the things that always struck me in that story, and even the stories from Gander, it always goes back, and I hear it time and time again in this province, only for the grace of God go I. And there were people needed it more than I. And if people needed it more than I and us, then that's what we did. And they're right, it's generational. It's something that needed to be done, and it was done. And only for the grace of God go I, and someone else needed that grace. So at the end of the day, you just stepped up to the plate and did what you need to do, as everyone did.
I'd like to respond to my beautiful Jeanette's question, I guess. It's that everybody has to remember and think back to where they were 21 years ago. And when we saw the tragic events taking place in New York, we were tied up in it as much as everyone else in the world. And I spent 32 years in municipal government, so trying to analyze different things over 32 years was always interesting, but I've always tried to analyze how we responded at that time and why we responded, because we had people come forward on that day in all of those communities, the surrounding areas, as Percy calls them, that never were on our volunteer list, never volunteered before. They got out of their homes after watching the horror unfold and be shown over and over, and the two towers falling in New York, and the tragedy that was going on there. And somewhat out of personal need, I think, we all came out, and all the volunteers came out to do whatever they could do, because the radio station was saying, we need people, and we need volunteers, and we need this, and we need that, and we need toilet paper, and we need whatever. So the need was being identified, and people were driven by what they were seeing, because, as you all might recall, the initial thought was that North America was under attack, and we were probably heading for what could have been a Third World War. So the need was driving, I think, us, and I say us collectively, and our volunteers to come forward and do whatever they could do. And some people came and cooked and spent days and days cooking and cleaning and whatever. Some people came and dropped off a boiler of soup and they were gone, but they did something. People were doing little things, people were doing big things, but people were driven by the situation and by the circumstance to do something. And at the end of the day, we were the beneficiaries of meeting some beautiful people from all over the world that the tragedy of the events in New York and the Pentagon pushed toward us. And some of those people have become friends for life, and some of the benefits as a result of come from away and those types of things are being reaped by our province and by our country, because it was a special time when people were really driven to do something, whatever they could do. Driving someone to the Shoppers Drug Mart, or driving someone to the hospital, or driving someone to the airport to look at all the planes that were there. Taking people out in boats and things like that. So there was so many things that people were driven to do, but they just wanted to get out and do something. And I think that is how, I guess our background and our history in Newfoundland is that we like to help one another and we trust one another. But on that day, we didn't care. We were trusting everyone, and we were trying to do whatever we could to make a whole bunch of people that needed our help comfortable and feel safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Janet, I think as Ethni said, people responded the way they did pretty much instinctively. It was I think it was just an instinctive reaction to a situation like that, and how everybody managed to keep it all together for that length of time and not sort of succumb to the emotion of, what was actually happening that precipitated all of this. I think as Rhonda said, everyone was just too busy, and you were in a little foggy anyway because of a lot of people's lack of sleep and so on. But I think it was only perhaps, and if you asked a lot of people, you know, when it really sunk into them, it was probably well after the last aircraft left, because people then had time to decompress and to process what had actually happened, rather than processing how are we going to get the meals together for the next hour when we got to do it. And so it was, in that sense, I think, you know, in real time, it was a distraction, you know, and I would suggest that many people weren't probably doing so well shortly after that, when we all had time to process, you know, what had actually transpired, and more particularly what had precipitated it and what that all meant. And I don't know that we had a whole lot of time to think about that. We saw it over and over again. We were in the middle of people that were that had been impacted and were being impacted by it, but I'm not sure we really fully processed it till after the chaos, local chaos, was over with. So I guess that's just an automatic reaction that people have that gets them through. It's not unlike shock. You know, it's just a reaction, I think, that gets us through these sorts of scenarios and enables us to find the strength, you know. And so I think that's what people ultimately did. Anyone else? Any more time? If not, I think we're near the end of the time frame, and I really want to again, and I think you would probably like to thank our 5 speakers again for their stories. Thank all of you for coming, particularly our visitors, our friends from the UK that came to see us, and hopefully we'll be here for a while, and hopefully we'll be here again. Thank you to the ambassador and his delegation for being here with us. It, as I said, is quite an honor, and everybody. Again, thanks for being here, and safe travels home, whether that's down the street or across the pond, as we like to say. Safe travels, and God bless.
have a comment about this program, we'd love to hear it. Email or call us, or send us your feedback through social media.
Sometimes it's hard to say goodbye to an old friend. But when you're saying farewell to your vehicle, Kidney Car makes it fast and easy. Just call or visit our website. We'll take any vehicle in any condition and give you a tax receipt for a minimum of $300. No headaches and no towing charges. It's the one-stop solution for getting rid of your unwanted vehicle in just a few short minutes. When your vehicles reach the end of the road, call us toll-free or visit kidneycar.ca.
Sports fans know Sundays are for football. That's why you need NFL Sunday tickets. With NFL Sunday Ticket, you'll get every live game, every Sunday afternoon, all season long. Follow your favorite teams and players live in HD. Order NFL Sunday Ticket and get up to 200 regular season games. Call 1-888-ROGERS-1 today.
Welcome to the postponed Convocation celebration of Memorial University of Newfoundland, coming to you from the Mary Brown Center in St. John's. Students who graduated in spring 2020, fall 2020, and spring 2021, as well as those who were unable to attend the fall 2021 in-person convocation due to COVID-related restrictions, were invited to participate in this special ceremony. In this session, taking place at 3 p.m. on Tuesday, June 21st, 2022, graduates from the following degree programs will be crossing the stage: Bachelor of Science Honors, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Science Cooperative, Bachelor of Environment and Sustainability, Bachelor of Business Administration Honors, Bachelor of Business Administration, International Bachelor of Business Administration Honors, International Bachelor of Business Administration, Master of Science, Master of Science in Boreal Ecosystems and Agricultural Sciences, Master of Environmental Science, Master of Business Administration, Master of Business Administration in Social Enterprise and Entrepreneurship. Postponed convocation ceremonies also took place in Corner Brook on May the 19th. This session of convocation is being presided over by Dr. Susan Dyer-Knight, Chancellor of Memorial University. The academic procession is led by University Marshal Bert Riggs, along with Marshals Brian Hammond, Derek House, Shona Perry-Maidment, and Donna Walsh. Dignitaries appearing on stage at today's session include Kathy Duke, Head of the Board of Regents, the Honorable Lisa Dempster, Minister of Indigenous Affairs and Reconciliation, Ms. Lisa Brown, Vice President, Dr. Margaret Steele, Provost Vice President Academic. The mace, a symbol of the authority vested in the university, is carried by University Marshal Bert Riggs. Convocation will be officially open when the mace is placed on the table in front of the Chancellor.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land. t'embrasser pour te le payer, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. When sun rays crown thy vine-clad hills and summer spreads her hand, when silvern voices tune thy rills, we love thee, smiling land. We love thee, we love thee, we love thee, smiling land. As loved our fathers, so we love. Where once they stood, we stand. Their prayer we raise to heaven above. God guard thee, newfound land. God guard thee, God guard thee, God guard thee, newfound land.
Please be seated. Well, it's my happy duty to declare your postponed Convocation celebration open. And I extend a very warm welcome to you graduates whose Convocation ceremonies in 2020 and 2021 were postponed due to the pandemic restrictions. We will begin, as always, with the land acknowledgement. I would like to respectfully acknowledge the territory in which we gather as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, and the island of Newfoundland as the ancestral homelands of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk. I would also like to recognize the Inuit of Nunatsiavut and Nunatuhavut, and the Innu of Nitassinan and their ancestors as the original people of Labrador. We strive for respectful relationships with all the peoples of this province as we search for collective healing and true reconciliation and honor this beautiful land together. Well, graduates, I hope you know just how welcome you are. I would say that that crowd up around in that upper circle is really feeling that way as well. We are delighted to have you return to Munn to celebrate this very special occasion together. Also, we want to warmly welcome your family and friends. They have come today to witness and salute you, their pride and joy. Today is an official public acknowledgement of your accomplishments, which we honor individually and also collectively in community. I have another very pleasant duty now. I am pleased to introduce a distinguished alumnus of Memorial University who will be our host for this special celebration. Trent McClellan is a Memorial graduate who's gone on to make his way in the entertainment industry. Born in Corner Brook, Trent first attended Memorial's Grenfell campus there and later studied at the St. John's campus, where he went on to proudly captain the Seahawks soccer team and also to get a Bachelor of Arts degree. Trent has performed stand-up comedy on stages all over Canada and the United States, as well as performing the Just for Last Festival in Montreal and hosting the Halifax Comedy Festival. His comedic talents have now taken him into his 6th season as a cast member on that iconic TV show. This hour has 22 minutes. Please welcome Trent McClellan.
Thank you so much, Chancellor, Honorable Minister, Chair of the Board of Regents, President, government members, members of the Board of Regents, members of the Senate and faculty, members of the graduating class, distinguished guests, townies, Bay people, people from here, people from there, people who couldn't get tickets, people who are here. Welcome. This is your celebration. Give it up for your celebration, people. It's happening. Thank you, Chancellor, for inviting me after the other person canceled this morning. Big honor to host these 4 postponed convocation sessions. And for those graduates in the audience, congratulations and welcome to your convocation. This is it. It's finally happening. After all these years, it's actually going down today. Sorry, I got excited there. Apologize. It took a while, but your big day is finally here. Today, in front of your family and friends, you will walk across this stage and feel the pride and sense of accomplishment that comes with graduating from one of the finest universities in the country. For those sitting at home and joining via live stream, congratulations and welcome to you as well. Thank you to our anthem singer, Jenny Mallard. Jenny's a recent graduate of the Bachelor of Commerce program at Memorial, and this morning she graduated as well and crossed this very stage. Jenny currently works at Memorial and is also a talented musician whose debut CD is set for release this fall. I also want to thank our pre-show and processional band, the Quintots Jazz Combo. They are comprised of Matthew Room on saxophone, Liam Kovich, piano, Genevieve Walsh, bass, and are currently pursuing their undergraduate studies at the Munn School of Music. And on drums, Jack Etchegary, who just graduated earlier this month with a master's in instrumental conducting from Memorial. Give it up for those folks. When I was asked to host this event, as I said this morning, I said I'm available, luckily, and came down here. I was at the hotel this morning. Felt pretty good about myself. Went to the gym yesterday, got a good workout in. Felt like $1 million this morning. Went downstairs in the hotel, and someone from the hotel said, "Are you part of the seniors bus tour?" I'm in my 40s, people. And I had a decision to make in that moment. Do I go with these old people? Do I come here and hang with the future leaders of this country? I think the answer is pretty obvious, people. I'm here with you people. But I did get a ride down on that bus. They were going that way on their way to Brigus. But some of them are in here today. I brought them in. They're up there somewhere. They have no relation to any of you here, but it's a big event for them too. So give it up for seniors who've come from around Canada. You'll get to Brigus eventually. I have to say this, no one is more excited to see all of you here today than Memorial's president, Dr. Vianne Timmons. In fact, after the pandemic started in 2020 and it was clear that large public gatherings could no longer take place, She is the person who insisted graduation ceremonies would be postponed instead of canceled. And I just learned there's a difference. She was determined that each and every graduate would be offered the opportunity to cross the convocation stage and have their moment in the spotlight in front of family and friends. Dr. Timmins grew up in Labrador City as one of 6 children and moved to Nova Scotia during high school. She holds degrees from Mount Allison University, Acadia University, Gonzaga University, and the University of Calgary. Smart. Her many awards tell us more about her. They include Canada's Top 100 Most Powerful Women, a National Inclusive Education Award, a Humanitarian Award, a Community Literacy Award, and the first Gender and Leadership in Higher Education Award. In 2017, she was named an Officer of the Order of Canada for her lifetime contribution to inclusive education, family literacy, Indigenous post-secondary education, and women's leadership. Reflecting her Indigenous heritage, in 2019, she received the Inspire Award for Education. Dr. Vianne Timmins took office as Memorial's 13th President and Vice Chancellor in April 2020, coming from the University of Regina, where she had served as President since 2008. However, also postponed due to the pandemic, her installation as President and Vice Chancellor was celebrated just a few weeks ago. Please welcome President Vianne Timmins.
Thank you so much. Aren't we lucky to have him emceeing, you guys? How fortunate. This hour is 22 minutes, Star, right? Let's give him a big hand. Chancellor, Honourable Minister Lisa Dempster, a fellow Labradorian, we're so thrilled you're here. You are one of our big supporters in government, and we're thrilled to see you. Chair of our Board of Regents, government members, members of the Senate and faculty, members of the graduating class. Well, really, you're not really members of the, you're graduates, right? Graduates and distinguished guests who are here today. Good afternoon, alumni. That's who you are now, alumni. I want to mention that today we mark National Indigenous Peoples Day, and I am proud to be part of an institution where we recognize and work towards reconciliation and indigenization. So a special congratulations to our Indigenous graduates who are here today to celebrate. And it's the longest day of the year. Lots of time for you to party. Lots of sunshine. Well, we hope sunshine for you. So normally at Convocation, we greet students who will become graduates, our newest alumni. That was taken away from you. So I am thrilled to have an opportunity to give you my sincere congratulations on all of your accomplishments. And I'm delighted that you took the time today to come here. I didn't go to my first 3 convocations, and when I finally went to my PhD convocation, I thought, why did I miss them? It was just a moment to celebrate. So I'm pleased that we're able to offer you this opportunity, and you'll have no regrets for accepting it. Do you know, we were quiet for 2 years, and now it's time to make some noise and have some fun. Let me hear. Let me hear. I want you today to hoot and holler. You know, you faced what is arguably the greatest societal upheaval of our generation. In the middle or the end of your programs, we sent you home. We told you you had to learn remotely. And I know that many of you found that to be challenging, but what did you do? You persevered. You knew how important it was to finish your degrees, to keep moving on your educational path, to start your careers, your jobs. Graduates, or alumni, this type of adaptability and commitment is good news for all the rest of us. It means you, the generation coming up behind us, our leaders of tomorrow, are ready to face whatever life throws at you, even if you don't think you are. And we're ready to help you with that with things such as our MUN Alum 101, professional and personal development webinars. So check them out. You have an opportunity now to use your skills and training to help our communities and build a better future. And alumni, you give us so much hope. So I want to mention that there were a lot of people who invested in this day for you. I want to think about your professors, those who supported you, your families, everyone who helped you reach your goals. So what we're going to do is practice that hooting and hollering and that noise, and we're going to say a big thank you to everyone here today and all who supported you. Can we do that, alumni? Let's go. Woo! It's important today to have fun, so as everyone walks across that stage, let's celebrate each and every one. Do you know, when I think about you launching your careers, I remember my first job. I got a job in a tiny community in northern British Columbia, and I'd never been outside of Atlantic Canada. I didn't know a soul in the community I was going to. So I went to Calgary to work for the summer and got my first car, and I drove up to northern British Columbia by myself. You know, I took a chance and it paid off, though I totaled my car after 6 months. But don't tell my mother. She still does not know that. But I took a chance, it paid off. Just think about a young girl being raised in Labrador. My dad was a miner, and now I'm standing here as president of your university. Life is going to be full of adventures for you. It's going to be so exciting. So that's my advice for you today. Be adventurous. Take chances. Take opportunities that get you outside of your comfort zone. I did that when I turned 40. I was really boring. I wasn't fun to be around. I didn't even enjoy my own company. So I thought, I've got to change this up. I need to become interesting. I need to interest myself a little bit. So I decided I was going to learn to ride a motorcycle at 40 years old. And I took lessons. I passed. And I hated driving a motorcycle. I hated it so much. You know how close to the pavement you are going 100 kilometers an hour? Like, it is right there. I was determined that I would never drive a motorcycle. But it was a good experience, except that Mother's Day, my husband and children bought me a motorcycle for Mother's Day as a surprise. So then I did ride the motorcycle, but I was so thankful when my son was turning 16 and he said, I can't wait to get my motorcycle license, Mom, and drive your motorcycle. I sold it the next day, and I haven't regretted it since. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't a good adventure. I also, at 41, decided I was going to take up running, and I went on my first run. I couldn't run 2 kilometers without stopping. So I went online, I did an 8-month program, and I decided I was going to run a marathon. I did, believe it or not. I know you're looking at me and saying, get out of town. You did not. I did. I trained, and I went and ran the Ottawa Marathon. When I hit 40 kilometers, I knew I could finish the 2, so I quit. I literally stopped, and I said, my husband was running with me. I said, I'm going to finish this, but I don't need to because I know I could, so I'm done. And I literally did that. People on the sidelines started yelling at me and yelling at me and getting angry with me, said, you finished this. You started it, you finish it. So I did, reluctantly, finish the 2 kilometers. So sometimes when you think you want to quit, people around you have to lift you up and get you to finish. So far, I've finished 5 marathons, 32 half marathons. So, you know, you never know what's ahead of you. You've got to take those chances. And you don't learn always by doing the easy stuff. Sometimes you've got to try to climb that mountain you think you can and feel that satisfaction when you get to the top or when you cross the finish line. And strength of character comes out when you don't think you can or when you can't. When you feel that disappointment, even sometimes despair, that's when you dig deep. And that's when each and every one of you can lift up that character that is deep inside of you, that character that got you through this pandemic, that character that's going to help you make a difference in the world, that character that's going to make you stand up for injustice. That is a role you have now. You are our leaders, and we need you. Albert Einstein once said, learn from yesterday, live for today, and hope for tomorrow. The important thing is not to stop questioning. So alumni, keep curious, keep asking, and keep hoping. We want you to go far, but we also want to keep you close. You're part of the Memorial alumni family, more than 100,000 strong. That's a lot of support. It's a worldwide connection. So I was at an alumni event at the UK in London just recently, and we had alumni that had been in the UK for a number of years, but we had 2 brand new grads who had just finished their programs. And they came to the alumni event, they were offered jobs. Both got jobs at that event. That's a true story. So you want to network, you want to see your career, remember that alumni are out there to support you and help you. You've joined a community of professionals, leaders, change makers who make a difference, who want to help you and support you. Your success is our success, and we are all so proud of you. Our Alumni Engagement Office offers opportunities to celebrate, to socialize, to mentor, to learn and advance your career. So stay connected. So on a final note, you know, we have not left this world in a great place. When I look out at you, and I look out and see your faces, I know that it is in good hands. It's in the hands of you, our future leaders, who are going to make a difference, who are going to change the world and leave it better for your children and my grandchildren. So thank you for all that you're going to do. I'm excited, I'm watching, and I am so hopeful. Thank you, graduates.
Thank you, Dr. Timmons. Never buy a bike from her. I ran a marathon once. Shouldn't say ran it, organized it. It's a pretty good joke. Anyway, quick note before we bring up these amazing graduates. Once you walk across the stage from this side to this side, you just keep walking right along there, down the stairs, and into a waiting van. No, I'm joking. Just walk down, just down the stairs there. You don't have to go back here. If you're near the drums, you're lost. Go right across here, and you'll be all good. All right, let's keep this thing moving. I would now like to invite Assistant Registrar Elizabeth Hillman to commence the presentation of the graduates.
Thank you, Trent. We shall now proceed with the presentation of the graduates from Spring 2020, Fall 2020, Spring 2021, and those in Fall 2021 who are unable to participate due to pandemic restrictions. You're invited to applaud each of the graduates as they cross the stage, and when some special honor is mentioned, to clap even louder. Chancellor, in the name of the Senate of the University, I present to you the graduates of undergraduate programs who received their degrees in absentia in 2020 and 2021. Due to extraordinary postponement of convocation ceremonies during those years, I request that you now recognize them as graduates of Memorial University.
I, as Chancellor, will now recognize these graduates as holders of undergraduate degrees and invite them to exercise all of the rights, privileges, and responsibilities which belong thereto. I call upon them on the hearing of their name to present themselves before me in the hood appropriate to the degree.
The degree of Bachelor of Science honors. Reem Abdelrahman.
Reem Abdul Rahman is from St. John's.
Ryan Achu.
Ryan Achu is from St. John's.
Salma Omardine.
Salma Omardine is from Gaborone, Botswana.
Herdisha Arif.
Herdisha Arif is from Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Emily Lenore Bento, winner of the University Medal for Academic Excellence in Biology.
Emily Lenore Bento is from Torbay.
Zoe Summer Breen, winner of the University Medal for Academic Excellence in Biochemistry and winner of the Captain Robert A. Bartlett Science Award.
Zoe Summer Breen is from St. John's.
William Trent Burgess, winner of the University Medal for Academic Excellence in Chemistry and winner of the Society of Chemical Industry Merit Award.
William Trent Burgess is from Bay Bulls.
Sophia Butt.
Sophia Butt is from St. John's.
David Joseph Drover, winner of the University Medal for Academic Excellence in Earth Science and winner of the Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Newfoundland and Labrador Award for Excellence in Geoscience.
David Joseph Drover is from St. John's.
Abigail Catherine Druken.
Abigail Catherine Druken is from Paradise.
Mayar Elbaz.
Mayar Elbaz is from Cairo, Egypt.
Mitchell Gerald Fagan.
Mitchell Gerald Fagan is from Conception Bay South.
Marie Flanagan.
Marie Flanagan is from St. John's.
Kyle Ivany.
Kyle Ivany is from St. John's.
Lauren Elizabeth Jackman, winner of the James L. Walker Convocation Award.
Lauren Elizabeth Jackman is from St. John's.
Lauren McCowan.
Lauren McCowan is from Petty Harbor Maddox Cove.
Jenna Nicole Marsh.
Jenna Nicole Marsh is from St. John's.
Andrea Elizabeth McGrath James.
Andrea Elizabeth McGraw James is from St. John's.
Riley Moores. Riley Moores.
Riley Moores is from St. John's.
Nicholas Knoll.
Nicholas Knoll is from Conception Bay South.
Vanessa Lauren Knoll.
Vanessa Lauren Knoll is from St. John's.
Noah Thomas O'Brien.
Noah Thomas O'Brien is from St. John's.
Leah Aruni Paranavadana, winner of the Grace Morgan Prize in Biochemistry and Nutrition.
Leah Aruni Paranavatana is from St. John's.
Zachary Gary Porter.
Zachary Gary Porter is from Deer Lake.
Thomas Rao. Kaylee Jane Smith.
Kaylee Jane Smith is from St. John's.
Callie Tanya Blanche Stone.
Callie Tanya Blanche Stone is from Clarenville.
Caitlin Tobin.
Caitlin Tobin is from Bay Roberts.
Joshua George James Tulk.
Joshua George James Tulk is from Pasadena.
Ashan Vijay Singh.
Ashan Vijay Singh is from Colombo, Sri Lanka.
Joshua John Winter.
Joshua John Winter is from Gander.
The degree of Bachelor of Science. Jocelyn Ijimwe Amy.
Jocelyn Ijimwe Amy is from St. John's.
Michael Au.
Michael Au is from Mount Pearl.
Elliot Barnes.
Elliot Barnes is from St. John's.